Have you ever felt like there's a part of yourself that you just can't or won't show to the world? Maybe it's something deep inside, buried so far down that even you don't want to look at it. But here's the thing. Ignoring this hidden part doesn't make it go away. In fact, according to one of the greatest minds in psychology, Carl Jung, refusing to confront this shadowy side of ourselves can lead to some pretty dangerous consequences. So today we're diving into why Jung believed there's a part of yourself you should never reveal, but also why trying to ignore it could be the biggest mistake of your life. Before we get into the heart of what Jung meant by all this, let me ask you another question. Have you ever noticed how sometimes people act completely out of character? You know, that friend who's always calm and collected but suddenly explodes in anger over something trivial. Or maybe someone in your family who seems perfectly happy on the surface but is secretly battling crippling self-doubt or resentment. Chances are these moments aren't random. They're often glimpses of what Jung called the shadow. And trust me, understanding this concept might just change the way you see yourself and everyone around you. So, what exactly is the shadow? According to Carl Jung, the shadow represents the parts of our personality that we reject, suppress, or deny. These are the traits, emotions, and impulses that we find unacceptable, not just to society, but to ourselves. Think about it. We live in a world where we're constantly told to be positive, productive, and polite. From a young age, we learn which behaviors are rewarded and which ones are punished. Over time, we start burying the aspects of ourselves that don't fit with this idealized version of who we think we're supposed to be. But here's the kicker. Those buried pieces don't disappear. Instead, they linger in the unconscious, influencing our thoughts, feelings, and actions in ways we may not fully understand. Jung argued that if left unchecked, the shadow can manifest as destructive patterns in our lives, things like unexplained anxiety, chronic conflict in relationships, or even physical symptoms like headaches or fatigue. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, so the shadow sounds bad, but why would Jung say you should never reveal this part of yourself? Well, here's where things get tricky. When Jung talked about not revealing the shadow, he wasn't necessarily saying you should keep it locked away forever. What he was warning against was exposing it recklessly without first doing the work to understand and integrate it. Because when you do bring the shadow into the light too soon, or in the wrong context, it can wreak havoc. It can alienate others, damage your reputation, and even sabotage your own sense of self-worth. Let's break this down with an example. Imagine someone who has spent years suppressing their anger because they were taught growing up that expressing anger is wrong. On the surface, they appear kind and agreeable, but underneath, that repressed anger simmers. One day, they snap, maybe during a heated argument or after months of pent-up frustration, and unleash a torrent of rage that shocks everyone around them. Now, imagine if this person had simply blurted out their anger earlier, without processing it or understanding its root cause. Sure, they might have avoided the big explosion, but they'd still risk alienating the people closest to them. That's the danger Jung warned about. Revealing the shadow prematurely, without wisdom or care, can destroy relationships and create chaos. But hold on, there's more to the story. While Jung cautioned against careless exposure of the shadow, he also believed that denying it altogether was equally harmful. Why? Because the shadow isn't inherently evil. Yes, it contains the darker aspects of our nature, the jealousy, the greed, the aggression, but it also holds untapped potential. For instance, someone who suppresses their assertiveness because they fear being seen as bossy might actually have incredible leadership qualities waiting to emerge. Someone who hides their vulnerability because they equate it with weakness might discover profound strength in opening up to others. The key, according to Jung, lies in acknowledging the shadow, exploring it, and finding healthy ways to integrate it into your conscious identity. So, how do you go about integrating the shadow? It's not easy, but it's absolutely worth it. Here are 3 steps Jung proposed to help you navigate this process. First, observe your reactions. Pay attention to moments when you feel intense emotion, anger, shame, envy, guilt. These are often clues pointing to shadow material. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? What triggered it? Is there a pattern here? Second, practice self-compassion. Remember, the shadow isn't bad. It's human. Everyone has one. Treat yourself with kindness as you explore these hidden parts of yourself. Judgment will only push the shadow further underground. Third, seek balance. Integration doesn't mean indulging every impulse or giving free rein to your darkest desires. Instead, it means finding a middle ground where you acknowledge and honor the shadow without letting it control you. This might involve setting boundaries, communicating openly with loved ones, or seeking therapy to work through unresolved issues. At this point, you might be wondering, if the shadow is such a powerful force, why don't more people talk about it? Why isn't this common knowledge? Well, the truth is, facing the shadow is uncomfortable. It requires us to confront parts of ourselves that we've spent years avoiding. And let's face it, most of us would rather stay in our comfort zones than embark on a journey of self-discovery. But here's the paradox. The more we resist the shadow, the stronger it becomes. By running from it, we give it power. By embracing it, we reclaim that power for ourselves. To illustrate this point, let's take a look at history. Some of the most influential figures in art, literature, and philosophy have grappled with their shadows in profound ways. Take Vincent van Gogh, for example. His paintings are celebrated for their raw emotional intensity. Yet during his lifetime, he struggled with mental illness and social isolation. Many scholars believe that Van Gogh channeled his inner turmoil, the parts of himself he couldn't express verbally, into his art. Through painting, he gave form to his shadow, transforming pain into beauty. Similarly, writers like Sylvia Plath and Fyodor Dostoevsky explored themes of darkness and despair in their work, using creativity as a means of integration. Their stories remind us that the shadow, while challenging, can also be a source of immense growth and transformation. Of course, not everyone handles the shadow constructively. History is also filled with examples of individuals and entire societies who fail to confront their shadows, leading to catastrophic outcomes. Consider authoritarian regimes driven by collective fears and prejudices. Often these systems arise when large groups of people project their own shadow onto scapegoats, blaming others for problems they refuse to address within themselves. This dynamic highlights another important aspect of Jung's theory. The shadow isn't just personal, it's collective. Our individual shadows intersect with societal norms, cultural values, and historical legacies, creating complex webs of behaviour that shape the world we live in. Which brings me back to my original question. Should you reveal this part of yourself? My answer is yes, but with caution. Revealing the shadow isn't about airing all your dirty laundry in public or dumping your emotional baggage on unsuspecting friends. It's about cultivating awareness, both individually and collectively, so that we can heal and grow together. It's about recognizing that we're all flawed, imperfect beings, and that's okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It's beautiful, because it's in our imperfections that we find connection, empathy, and ultimately, redemption. As we wrap up today's discussion, I want to leave you with this final thought. The shadow is not your enemy. It's a teacher. It shows you where you need to grow, where you need to heal, and where you need to shine a little extra light. So, the next time you catch a glimpse of that hidden part of yourself, the part you'd rather keep buried, don't turn away. Lean in, listen, learn, and remember, the path to wholeness begins with courage. Thanks for joining me today, and until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.